Welcome everyone, the hour being 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. The Twila City Council and the Redevelopment Agency are meeting in a work meeting being held at the Twila City Hall in the council chambers located at 90 North Main Street. This is also being broadcast on the Twila City YouTube channel. We will start our meeting with a roll call. Councilwoman Manzione.
Present.
Councilman Hanson.
Present.
Councilman McCall.
Present.
Councilman Graff.
Present.
He's joining us by phone, and I'm Councilman Brady. I'm also present. We'll move on to item 3, which is the mayor's report.
Thank you, Chairman and Council. Tonight for my mayor's report, I first want to just extend my thanks to the many organizations, groups, volunteers throughout our city that have volunteered to take upon themselves a cleanup project, and that we had listed on our website, cleaning up our parks and other public spaces. And we've had a great response from that, and I appreciate all of them that have already completed their projects, and for those that are upcoming, and there are several. This Saturday, I would also like to invite our residents to meet us up at the Twila Valley Museum, or better known as the Railroad Museum, where the train is. And we're meeting there at 9 a.m. And what we're going to be doing is cleaning up the park itself there, the Railroad Museum Park. But we are also going to do an extensive project to clean up the Broadway area. And that is going to include painting buildings that are just covered in graffiti. We have spoken with private property owners, and they are giving us permission to come onto their property and clean up the graffiti. So we just think that if we make one concerted effort to really work hard, get it all looking really well, and then hopefully we can keep it looking that way. It's a great part of our city history, and we need to take better care of it. So I hope to meet all of you, and as many residents as can come up for an hour or 2 or 3. We will be there for the 3 hours and help us with the graffiti cleanup. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 4, which is the council members' report. We'll start with Councilman McCall.
This is the last. I don't really have anything.
All right, Councilman Hanson.
Also, I don't have anything tonight.
All right, Councilwoman Manzione.
I don't either. I was going to express thank you also to the people. I've stopped by a couple of the cleanup projects, and I appreciate the work people have been doing.
Councilman Graff.
No new report, but I am looking forward to Saturday, and I do love hearing reports about our community, cleaning our community up. That is always heartwarming, and that really is community pride. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything specific for this meeting. I just attended my regular meetings, and we'll move on to our next item, which is our discussion items. The first discussion item is Resolution 2023-38, a resolution of the Twila City Council adopting the Modified Public Employees Health Program, PEHP IRC Section 125 Cafeteria Prototype Plan for Twila City's Cash in Lieu/Waiver Program, presented by Cammie Perkins, the Human Resources Director.
And you guys all know exactly what that means just off the title, right?
Very wordy.
It's very wordy. So as you may recall, last July, Golden West Insurance got out of the business of administering flexible spending account programs. And when they got out of the business, we made the decision to just move our flex plan to be administered by the Public Employees Health Plan, Flex Plan. As part of that change, in order to have legitimate Section 125 protected plans, you have to have official plan documents in place. So you had approved the flexible spending account for the medical, the limited flexible spending account. They call it the premium only plan, which allows us to put some of our insurance premiums pre-tax on our employees, as well as the dependent care account. We thought we took care of all of the business. And then about, 4 or 5 months into that, I got looking through the documents again and just filing and working on something, and got a hold of PHP, and I said, I can't see in here where our waiver program is adequately covered. It was supposed to be in here and I'm not seeing it. And so it's something that I should have caught back then and did not, but I'm bringing that to you now. And what this is this is a formal plan document adoption. These are what the IRS requires we have in place in order for our certain benefits to be pre-tax. Now, why this one matters is you might be thinking, but this has to do with the waiver payback. This has nothing to do with pre-tax contributions. Under the Internal Revenue Code, there are rules that state when you do cash or benefit, then everything becomes taxable to you. So this is really, to me, it's kind of silly, but we have to have it in place because if we don't, then all of the premiums that are paid, we no longer under the IRS can treat those as pre-tax benefits because we offer a cash in lieu of taking those pre-tax benefits. So this does go retroactive back to July 1st. Our plan does allow us to do retroactive amendments. And I worked with PEHP for several months, and mainly that was just because of their schedule. They were dealing with the legislature, their attorneys are up there, and then by the time they were able to get to the point where they could give us the attention that they needed, and we weren't in a hurry, we were able to do it retroactively. We've worked with them. We took what's called their prototype documents, meaning that they write these for agencies to adopt. That's part of what we pay for in our service. And we just amend them to meet whatever our plan needs would be. In doing this discussion with them, so that's this document, but there are a couple of things that did come out in that discussion. Number one, I was informed by PEHP, as along with all of you guys all know what's happened with our insurance plan, right? We've had enough discussions on that. They actually are relooking at all groups that do cash in lieu to make sure that the amounts that they're offering are not adversely impacting their risk pool. So they put a limit on how much we can offer as a cash in lieu, and their cap is $4,000. We cannot offer more than that, or we'd be in violation of our group contract for our health insurance. Fortunately, we're under that limit. Ours is just a little bit over $3,700 for the year. In that discussion, they also had a few different things we had to talk about, whether or not we would accept TRICARE, which is military-based coverage, as suitable coverage. And working with Roger, thank you, we found that most TRICARE plans meet the requirements. There's a few that don't, and so we've modified our enrollment forms just to cover that. The other issue that came back is you actually cannot, by law, accept Medicare or Medicaid. And so we have notified a few of our employees that they don't have to take our coverage. They can still decline it and stay on that. But it does preclude us from offering cash to them to not take it. That's a separate law under Medicare and Medicaid. So we have worked on that, and we will be amending our policies. So what I'd like to do is I want to, first of all, just make sure there's a couple of things that are coming up. The first one is the cafeteria plan documents. But then at this time, you also have a decision to make as a council that will apply to council benefits. Most of the city council, in fact, all of you at this time, are taking the cash in lieu of coverage. Your coverage is a little bit over $9,000 in total compensation if you took single coverage. The waiver plan, of course, we said is $3,700. But I do have a couple who are on Medicare. That tends to be our older employees. And what this would do is it would preclude, it would make it so that those employees would not be able to get the cash in lieu. They would have to either take the group plan or they would stay on Medicare and just have their Medicare coverage, but not get the same cash payment as the rest of the council. I'm bringing that up now because it's impacting this plan. We're starting an election year, and for many years, there's always been debate on total compensation for our council, and do we want to have their compensation be in cash, or do we want it to be in a benefit package? So one option that I wanted to present to you, if you so choose to discuss it, is now might be a good time to transition our total compensation for the city council and shift some of that from it being a benefit on the health insurance and satisfy to where everybody has the cash payment and it still keeps you. It would actually be a reduction in your total compensation. What you would do is you would increase your salary for the same amount and the value that the waiver benefit is. The trade-off on that is then, down the road, you would in essence be saying council members who are our only part-time employees that are on the plan would not have access to our health insurance plan moving forward. There's been debate back and forth over the years on that, but I was asked to bring that up tonight as a topic as we're discussing not only the flex plan, but that slight nuance that does have an impact on a couple council members. So you guys could discuss and decide what you wanted to do. And with that, there you go.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council?
Hey, Cammy, if we did away with the council on the insurance, that would take away the flex plan also, right?
No, you can still participate in the
You can
flex
still-
plan. You can still do the dental plan. You would not have access to the health savings account because
Or the
that one would be
medical
tied to the high deductible health plan.
Or the medical insurance, okay. All right, perfect.
So
Yeah.
currently, the council's the only part-time employees, because we're considered part-time, right?
Yes.
That have access to health insurance.
Yes.
Right.
And we have had, over the years, we've had some council members who have taken it, either double coverage or that was their only option, and it varies, but it does produce, just now, I wanted to bring it for discussion because it has come up over the years, and none of you are taking it right now, so.
Well, and I just went on Medicare just a few months ago, and so that's affecting me too personally, so that's, just so you know,
I can add what I tell
We thought we
you.
was fine until the other day when we found this out.
Yeah, what I
right?
tell you is, okay, and this is just frank, I don't want to discuss your personal, but what I tell any council member is Medicare, you have to pay for Part A and or you have to pay for Part B and then your prescription drug coverage. And like the waiver was a good offset, but if you're not eligible for that, I just go back on the single plan and then you're back to a $9,000 benefit, 9,000 total comp versus the 37. So it's a plus and a minus, but for the public interest, you would be reducing your total compensation. You'd be reducing your compensation if you switched it over to wages instead of benefits.
Okay, are there any
You're
other
also at the
comments?
beginning of an election year, so it'd be a good time to let candidates know if you're interested in making that change.
So if all the council members took the insurance, that would be roughly $45,000, right, that you would? Or is that just for
Hold
single?
on, I ran that for you. The only thing that you guys allow is single coverage. Is you can insure your family, but you pay 100% of the cost to insure your dependents. The only benefit that was authorized for the council in past budgets, now keep in mind this can also change budget to budget, but in past budgets, you've only said we'll only pay for single coverage at the same cost sharing that we do for regular employees. And when I ran it, the cost potential of all 5 council members taking the single health insurance was about $56,000. And then the cost potential if all 5 waived it drops it down to just a little over 22.9. Yes, I've hit that point. I can't read that and read this, so we'll get there.
Okay. Well, I support not having the insurance option anymore and then just adding that to the salary. I think it would be better in the long run, a cost-saving measure, you could say, just so there's not the potential of all 5 council members taking the insurance. And I wouldn't say I have a bad taste in my mouth, but I don't think it's fair that as a part-time employee, we're the only ones that are offered it and it's not offered to the other part-time city employees as well. So I've heard the history of why that decision was made and the discussion. I've heard some of that, but that's where I stand
And it's
on
across
this.
the board. Just to let you know, when we benchmarked it in the past is some agencies do, some agencies don't. There's no consistency. It's, even here locally, some do, some don't. Just a matter of what's best for our policy and what you guys would like to see happen.
I'm good with it.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to mirror your comments, Chairman, or Chair. that I think it would bring us in line with other employees, and I don't see the necessity to have that special cutout just for us, and so I support the change as well.
Can I offer an idea for maybe a mid-discussion? Is that open? This is a work meeting. We do have an individual life insurance policy that's written for city council members. It's not the same value as what we provide to our other employees. But we also could still, if you wanted to, you could still provide access to the dental plan and access to the vision plan. Those aren't nearly as expensive. We do allow our part-time employees to participate in the flex plan if they work more than 20 hours. So you have some options. I just wanted to throw that out if that's something you're looking at or interested in.
Anyone have strong feelings anyway on this? I don't think most of us
the
up
fact
here are
that-
running,
Yeah.
you don't run for an elected position to say, I'm going to get health insurance. So to me, it's like, even the pay is not a reason that I think anyone up here is running for an elected position. So I don't have any heartburn saying no health insurance at all. I don't think that's why people run for elected positions. I could be wrong, though.
I agree. I mean, it's a benefit that's appealing, but it's really not the reason you run. Don't run for the salary or any of that part of it. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you interested in shifting any of that benefit cost to salary? So in the waiver payment, your compensation is $3,700, I think, for the waiver program. Are you interested in all at moving that just to base salary? You'd still be a reduction in your total compensation, but I just need some direction from you because I'll have to bring a policy back to change the benefits policy, but I don't know. Roger and I were talking, what does that entail if they do choose to do that? Increase wage and decrease benefits?
Right, Council, my opinion has been that the public hearing and resolution you would be required to have to adopt a salary schedule, including your salaries, is satisfied when the salary schedule is part of the budget process and you have a resolution and a public hearing on the budget. If you were to change council salaries or benefits mid-year, then you'd have to have a separate resolution and public hearing on that issue alone.
So I'll speak. I support adding it to the salary. We're not giving ourselves a raise. It's the same amount that we're getting currently. It's just the way that it's being distributed. So I support it. Everyone up here has waived the insurance and got that amount. So I don't see the problem with adding it to the salary.
And so when I bring a policy change back to you, what are your thoughts on dental or vision plan? Do you want that left on, or? You have a separate life insurance that's written as an agreement, so, and I don't have recommendations either way. I just want to make sure you know what some of your plan options are, and, it might be a kind of a little token, I guess, lack of better terms, but I want you to have nice smiles, I guess. Let's put it that way. And be able to see your agendas. Just kidding, but.
I do take the double right now. I take that and the other.
Yeah, the
As part
dental.
of the dental and.
I would say
the
most
vision.
of you take the dental coverage. That is one that's been popular.
Heck, it's very inexpensive.
Yeah, I'm good either way, really.
I mean, I think we leave the dental and vision how it is, and
Yeah,
they're not,
not significant.
Yeah.
I mean, they're expenses, yes. I don't want to say nothing's insignificant, but I think as the approach, and I will bring, what I'll do then is we'll bring this cafeteria plan document back to you for formal approval and the resolution with that. I just wanted it, it's awkward. It's awkward to be the one to say, someone asked me to bring this up, but I also raised the question because I knew we would have that issue with getting this document in place, and when PHP talked to us about that. So I needed some direction on how to handle that moving forward. So it was just the right timing to bring that back to the surface and let you guys evaluate it. So I'll bring this back, and then we also will have to do some updates on our actual policy manual, because that's what says what benefits you're eligible for. Hopefully I can bring them at the same time, along with just some other updates with some laws that have changed that we'll need to get to you. So.
And before she leaves, I just want to make a comment, and thank you for doing what you're doing. But I think, well, in fact, I know, part of the reason why it was brought up originally was, and it was the part-time thing was part of the conversation, but it was considered because there was some things going on, and pretty much every member of the council was working a lot, and it wasn't just, it was considered to be a part-time job, and it is. But you know, as you know yourself, you get phone calls all the time. You get beat up all the time, and that was brought into the forefront, and that was why it was originally done that way, somewhat. But I just wanted to make so that everybody would know there was a reason behind adding that
Benefit.
to the council, even though they were technically part-time.
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion about it even at that time. It's not a clear cut, like I said, it's all over the place, but as the council, you have the decision now in front of you, and I was asked to bring it up and needed to. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our second discussion item, which is a discussion on the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget discussion. So the way we have this set up, I don't think anyone emailed, right? Any questions that I'm aware of? So the council had an opportunity to email questions if you had any questions. That doesn't mean we can't ask questions now, but if the mayor or Shannon don't have the answer right now, they'll just write it down, and then they'll get back to us with any questions that we have. So are there any questions right now regarding the budget?
I just have one. I think it's because, and it might have to do with CAMI, but it was the proposed increase in wages compared to what the cost of insurance is going to be, what that compares, if they're going to lose money or they're going to make more money overall, you know, if it's going to make their income go down, or is it going to maintain? Is that why the 5.5%? Was that trying to cover the insurance? 'Cause I know the insurance is going up approximately 20%. I don't know which one do you want to answer.
You didn't get to sit over there very long, did you?
Cami, I think it's just about explaining the 5.5% COLA that we're recommending, and then what the 1% was.
And then what the insurance cost is comparatively, what that's going to go up on the employees.
All right.
I wasn't sure. I was reading your email and reading the budget, and I'm not positive.
Okay, well, first of all, I appreciated some of the questions that were asked of the mayor. It helps us just to be a little bit more prepared. And as you know, my philosophy and my role, I clearly understand, is to provide you and Mayor Nguyen with as much information as I can so that you can make educated decisions. We've been working on the budget. If you'll recall, we met first in February. And at that point in time, we had talked about what we were seeing with inflation, the consumer price index, the Social Security COLA, and we were looking at over an 8% cost of living adjustment. So does this ring a bell to everybody? And at that time, we had lots of lengthy discussion about our price point in comparison to the market, what our turnover was, what we were dealing with recruitment, and basically the impact to the workforce. And from you, we got some direction that you were comfortable, some of you were comfortable being more like 5%, and then there were a few that said, nope, we need to do the full 8%. So of course, we went back and we ran the numbers, and we said, well, let's go worst case scenario and see what 8% does for us. Then we got this, literally, I went into the bathroom and was heaving when they told me that we started with a 60% insurance renewal. I'll put these numbers for you. That's over $1 million. We're upside down in our insurance plan by $1.3 million, so they wanted to increase next year's premiums by over $1 million. That's huge, and so we've had those discussions on, we can't do both. Our vendor, Golden West Insurance, really went to bat for us, and they came back at a 30% renewal with some changes that they were going to require on our plan. When we sat down and we started looking at that, that still would have significantly increased our employees' contribution, not only the city's portion, but the employees' portion. And when we look at that, we still need to be competitive in terms of what we're asking our employees to pay for coverage, and we need to offer coverage to our employees that is affordable, right? Now, the affordable is a really broad term. You've got the Affordable Care Act's law of affordable, and then the reality of what we take home. So Mayor Wynn and I spent a lot of time, and we worked with PHP, and they came back and offered us some plan revisions. Basically, we adopted and we put out to our employees that we did have to adopt different plans. Their deductibles went up, co-payments went up, out-of-pocket maximums went up. That brought us down to a 27% rate increase. So we went from 60 down to 27%. That still didn't get us where we were comfortable with trying to balance out our wages because we're struggling there. In fact, I brought something I'll show you if it's okay. That still didn't give us what we felt like we needed to get wages up, and it ended up passing a lot of money on to the insurance end versus the take-home, where employees then, if they use insurance, they're going to pay more. If they use less, they can allocate it. So we worked on several different scenarios, and we came up with a change in our rate sharing. And what that means is that employees, where they were primarily single coverage, used to have 100% coverage on any of the plans except for the main buy-up plan. And we switched our free plan to be our Summit plan, which is the high deductible health plan, and then did anywhere from an 80 or a 60% cost sharing, depending on what plan that they take on the single coverage. With that, one of the things that the mayor and I have always been cognizant about is every one of us hates when we get a cost of living increase, and that goes to here, but then our insurance premiums go to here, and we end up at home, worse shape than what we were. That's not always it's not always a perfect answer, right? Like, that's how it is sometimes, but we try to look at, with what we're changing, what impact will it have on some of our lowest paid employees? Because those are the ones that we're all hurting, but are hurting the most. And we also looked at, those are some of the occupations we're struggling with. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever we propose for our cost of living and our insurance increase, the employees that are in like the grade 10 jobs, these are like our streets, entry-level streets people, our parks workers, your blue collar out there on the pavement, that with the insurance increase, they still would receive some level of take-home pay increase. And I can give you those numbers, but we look at those. With that, though, we do know we're shuffling quite a bit, and we're making some pretty significant plan changes. So what we've presented to you is we're asking you to consider a 5.5% COLA adjustment. That's just a 5% adjustment to the salary schedule, way below what we were originally talking about with 8%, because the insurance ended up costing and was a surprise to us, and some of you weren't comfortable with the 8%. The other thing that's happened since then is we've seen a cooling with the inflation. The last few months, we're not at those high 7% numbers, and I've sent that out to you guys to show you our average, I think it was March to March that I ran for you, is about 7%. So we're asking for 5.5. Then we're asking you to do a 1% adjustment additional to the salary schedule as what we call an insurance offset, and I've just explained all of that to you. What this does is, when I've presented to you in the past and we've talked about the city's strategy, our market position, the lead and lag. Remember, we talk about we lag in base pay, we're going to lead in benefits. We're not there anymore. We're hoping that we're matching the market now in benefits. This year really threw things off for us. So if we lag, match, we've kind of lost that balance in our strategy. So with the 1%, that's going to pull that wage back up, not quite where we need to be, but hopefully we're getting to more of a match in the market, because we don't have control over our health insurance, right? We have to have health insurance. The other question that came up with that was, well, why don't we just send it out to bid? When you're upside down at 1.3 million, no one wants your plan. We're basically a high-risk insurance, which is not unusual for government plans. And honestly, I'm hearing from a lot of agencies that's happening. So that's what the 5.5 and the extra 1% is that 1% is realigning the total compensation in terms of your direct costs and your indirect costs, and just shuffling that a little bit. I did print out a couple things for you. I'm going to give you, if you're okay, I'm giving you a copy of our current salary schedule, and then I'm going to give you a copy of what the salary schedule might look like. Chairman, would that be okay?
Yes.
Mayor, is that okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have your two stapled weird together. I think I put yours backwards. So let me take those back because these are all the same. Okay. And if I'm giving you too much information, please let me know, but Councilman Hanson, I don't know any better way than to answer your question than to go through what we've had for months of discussion, okay?
And I appreciate it, you're doing
Okay.
exactly what I'm looking for.
So if you see the one that's the light green, that should be your first one. You have a bunch of numbers and a bunch of grades and steps. This is our current salary schedule, and I'm going to point out to you a couple things so that it makes sense to you. We talked about like the worker bee, the entry level. We advertise for a streets operator, comes with this, a CDL. They're plowing, they're fixing, and they're taking care of the streets, or a water operator. Right now, we have that position at a grade 10 on our salary schedule. So when I advertise that, we advertise at $18.06 an hour. You guys know what's happened in the market, and I want you to think about, would that be enough for you to live off of? Plus an insurance increase now, which I could tell you what that is, but we've got that. If you look at the next salary schedule on that position, that would bump it up to $19.95. Now, the reality is that there's career ladders. They can promote to higher grades, but that's giving you an idea of the change that we're asking for. Just today, I kind of laughed and respect our partners up the street, but I'm going to show you two different ads for very, very similar positions so that you can understand a little bit about how fast the market moved around us. Thank you. Thanks. So for the public that's listening, what I've just provided to them was not in their packet, but it's just two advertisements. On the left-hand side, there is a laborer for Tooele County, and they are advertising at $16.30 an hour. It's a laborer with driving responsibilities. If you look at Tooele City, we're advertising at $14.83. The high is $15.65. This just happened to be two advertisements that were up yesterday at the same time, side by side. We are 6 months behind the county, so by the time we do whatever you guys are going to do, then in 6 months, they do their budget again, and so we're always playing this domino effect. But you'll notice if we do the proposed salary adjustment, if you were to adopt what we're asking for, that would bring this position up to $16.38, which is just 8 cents more than where we're at, and then they'll pass us up. This is, honestly, I cannot say I did like a wage study for you like I've done in the past. That's just an exhibit that happened to be on the computers, and when I had a teenager ask me why we're so much lower for the same job, I had to go in and find out what they were doing. So that's just an exhibit to help you as you're looking at everything. So Councilman, I hope that answers your question. The 5.5% is what the state of Utah did for their cost of living adjustment. Grantsville is looking at doing 6%, and then they're renegotiating what they're going to do for their merit on top of that come December. I wish I was in Grantsville's shoes because their health insurance went up by 1%. Yeah, let's go ooh, ah back there. Nobody go apply, right? No applications there. But they're a small group. They're at a different situation than we are because in theirs, their primary payer changes different if somebody's on Medicare or not. Medicare's primary for them. Medicaid's primary for them. It's secondary for us. I mean, there's just differences in the plan. We're a large group. They're a small group. So now Shannon gets to tell you what that means to the big budget, if she wants to, but hopefully that gives you some information. I also provided to you through email emails going back and forth between the HR people, I guess is what you call, on what's everybody looking at for their cost of living and merit. And we saw some as high as 10% this year, and we saw some as low as 1%. And so this is not a usual year where it's pretty consistent. They're all over the board, and it comes down to what we'd like to do and what we can afford to do are two different things. With that, Chairman, the one thing that I do want to point out is Councilman, for about every 1% that we do, we estimate it to be about $130,000. And by the time we did all of the shuffling and this restructuring on the insurance, it was about $100,000 less than what we had planned for. We really did a lot of work to make that work. So that's another reason how we came up with that 1% was, okay, that's the amount we're passing to the employees, whether it's by benefit structure or cost sharing. So if we can rebalance out our total compensation and our indirect compensation, we felt like that was a good, valid way to come up with the number we were bringing to you.
Employees still have an option to opt out of insurance, right, and receive the waiver?
If they have proof of other qualifying insurance. So they would have to be covered under another group plan that was eligible under that plan document that you guys are that we just talked about. So we have about 40 employees, including you 45 that do the cash in lieu. And to give you an idea on that, you're up to about $22,000 now is what you pay for family coverage. When I say you, I mean us as the city. So if they don't take it, we're paying $3,700. It's a win-win. We still pay taxes on it, of course, but that's also why if you ever see your numbers fluctuate quite a bit when we give you budgets and why we have to use estimate, we may have an employee who has waived coverage and then the spouse loses their job, which is a qualifying life event. So now they come onto our plan and we cover it. You know, that can shift. You get 2 or 3 of those in one department, that could be $40,000 to $60,000 right off the bat. So the numbers they seem huge, but they fluctuate by a couple $100,000 easily.
And one more question from me. I guess I got the questions, but.
That's all right.
The health insurance, you said that you're going to be changing the coverage. Is it drastic or is it minor?
It depends on
It
depends on what your needs are. Yeah. So the first option that they brought back to us, we thought was quite drastic. It would take people from a $750 deductible to, I think it was $1,500 deductible. You know, people that were on that buy-up plan. The out-of-pocket maximums went up, and I'm sorry I wasn't as prepared for insurance questions like that, but that's when we went back to them and we said, look, it's important to us to have choice for our employees. We think there's value in that, and so would you work with us and structure a plan to where we can still have our base plan, our premier plan, and then our high deductible health plan. Surprisingly, a lot of employees pick the high deductible health plan because it's the cheapest plan for them. And so if you went from the premier plan where you are at $750 and now you switch to the high deductible health plan, your premiums are going to be adjusted, like they'll go down. But when you use the insurance, that can have an impact on a family. So they need to, and we try to encourage them to really look at them, be engaged, and pick the plan that best meets your needs in terms of premium and on coverage and what you're most comfortable with. And they did allow us to still offer the 3 different options.
And I think as far as benefits go, I mean, we say we want to keep our benefits pretty good because since our wages are a little bit lower, comparatively to what else is out there, even with that high of a deductible, it's still pretty good. I mean, I think I know that my deductible is triple that, at least. So, and a lot of the people that I know, in my neighborhood and such have much higher deductibles than that. So I still think even though it increased for our employees, that high deductible plan, it's still better than a lot of plans out there.
Yeah, the high deductible plan actually stayed the same for us. That was one that the cost change and the amount that we are going to when I say recommend, it's always awkward because we have to have all of our insurance locked in before we finally adopt the budget. So administratively, that decision comes for the mayor to say, push the button, I'm signing it. We did lower the health savings account contributions slightly, but that's still consistent with some of the rates we passed on. We just found with employees that there's some who prefer lower premium and they're willing to take the risk on it. And then there's others who they like the security of knowing when they go into the doctor's office, they're not paying more than whatever it might be. And I'm really happy over the years that the city's been able to offer those options to them. I think that's a value added too.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Shannon? The rest of the time's yours.
Thank you, Kevin.
Does anyone have any other specific questions?
Council, I did just want to point out, I did leave you all printouts. Those are the capital projects that the mayor has recommended for this fiscal year for the 41 fund, Capital Projects Fund. There is one sheet, and that will include all of the carryover projects. So those are projects that were funded this year but won't be complete by June 30th. And so we'll carry over the remaining amounts that we need to complete those projects. And then you also have a list of all of the equipment and projects that were requested for fiscal year '24, and you can see what the mayor has prioritized and approved. We had 1.2 million, I believe, is what we had this year to try to put towards equipment and projects. So she's done her best to prioritize those, but stay within that budget amount. So that is your list of capital equipment and capital projects for this year that's being recommended.
So the recommended amount is the one that has the dollar amount by it? Like which one has been approved or are you planning to? Like
The
in
one with the line
this
item?
section,
Yes.
which ones are?
Okay, yeah. Yes, so this one in this column right here where it has an amount.
Okay, that's good.
If it has an amount in that first amount column, and then also it will have a line item out to the side, those are the ones that are approved. If those are blank, those are ones that have been requested but were not able to be funded this year.
I think it was 5.9 million in requests, and we had 1.2 million.
Yeah.
That's the tough part.
When it says each year, so will that just go into like a fund where each year, like the cemetery irrigation system, it says $30,000 each year?
So he's just saying he would like to fund that each year to keep it up, but each year it's susceptible to does he get approved or not.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I understand.
He's just saying that's an ongoing cost that they need every year to keep up on that irrigation system.
I just had a question on revenues, because when we had our first budget meeting, we was talking about sales tax and thinking it wouldn't go up very much. And we've been a few months now. Did the next quarter come in and was it low, or did it go up, or do you know that?
We did end up having 1 month that was down, which was the first we've seen in quite some time. The other months have gone up, but just slightly. So we're still receiving, let's see, this is May. So we've still only received it through February. So what I have projected for next year is projecting what we will bring in this year, and I kept it flat at that. So, but we do have a larger appropriation from fund balance for this year because we were so conservative on those revenues, and hopefully the economy doesn't downturn and we get those revenues back. But that's what I've projected for sales tax. I believe it's 9.5 million.
I noticed that, and so that's why I was curious about what really happened, as far as, so that's probably a good idea. The other question I had is our fund balance has to be 30% now or something, or our minimum
35.
can be that 35, is it? Is that where we're at on that?
That's about exactly where I project we'll be at,
Okay.
is right about 35%, maybe just under, but not even a full percent.
Okay.
Under that is what I'm hoping for. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen the the few months that are going to come in, but
Sure.
I expect us to be at 35.
Okay, all right.
And just so you know, for the property tax, I did leave that currently at the current rate, and then plus our new growth, which again is just an estimate. We won't see those numbers until June. But that number will change depending on what we decide to do with the tax rate once we see it.
Okay, and then on the revenue on the grants, I mean, we had lots of grants last year. I guess they're still coming in, right? So that's why they're not there?
Yeah, so I don't normally budget them until they are awarded, or
Okay.
actually a lot of times when we bring them, I mean, they bring them to get approval to apply for them, but then we put them in the budget when we receive them, so we put the offset to the expense account and the revenue account. If there are any, you will see like the drug task force, we know that amount, it's ongoing pretty much every year, so we'll go ahead and put that in because we can count on that. The other ones, we really can't count on those until they've been applied and approved, yeah.
Sure. And they usually happen during the year,
Yeah.
during the budget year, right?
Yeah, and then we bring those back with the budget amendments.
Okay.
You do have a large one, that's a carryover, and that's why that one still has that amount.
Okay. Perfect.
Does this consider so we raised impact fees on different items, right? Like, was it sewer we just did? I can't even remember.
So we have now done all four over the last
All of them.
year
So
and a half
is that
or so.
included, like, those numbers are in this budget, right?
Yeah, but if you look
it's
at
all
your,
estimated,
if you look at your
obviously.
revenues, well, I guess you can't see the impact fees. Well, you can if you go to each fund, but if you look at your building fees, they have dropped significantly. So those are all going to come in significantly under budget.
Okay.
As those numbers drop off. So I still think in impact fees, even though you've increased the rates, I don't think your revenue is going to increase because the building is just slowing down. So I still think your revenue will decrease. So for example, if you look at public safety impact fees, we budgeted $300,000 for this year, but we are estimated to only bring in about $192,000. So next year I put $200,000 in there as an estimate. If obviously that's just a guess if things stay the same, but if they continue to decrease, it will go below that as well. And you'll see that in each of the funds that have impact fees, your public safety, your parks, your water and your sewer.
Okay, explain to me, this is just me being dumb, I'm sure. Explain to me about the fire department and the bond and the transfer of the money, you know, that's been sent out recently, and I just didn't really understand how we're funding that and why we're bonding now, a year ahead, or?
Okay, so
So
actually,
do you
that's a
mind
great
telling me-
question.
tell me
Yes, so
that?
no, that's a great question. We'll discuss that a little bit in the MBA meeting, but, so when we did the tax increase for the fire station, we did that last year, and that is because we will need to put up one full year of the bond payment in escrow. And so what we planned for at that time was about $441,000 a year. And you will see that in the 10 fund, in the 4810 department, which I think I gave you guys names now, it's called transfers. So we transfer $441,150, and we have put that aside in savings because we will need that when we close on this loan. So what we are proposing is that we apply for a CIB, low interest rate loan. And so we will need all of that funding in place before we can actually award a bid to a contractor to obviously, oh, go ahead.
What's a CID?
The Community Impact Board.
Okay.
So that is also the funding mechanism that we use to fund the fire station. Right now, I believe their interest rate is just over 3%. So that is by far the cheapest financing that the city can possibly get. One thing that might be a little bit of a struggle, we've been working on, the fire chief has done an amazing job trying to get this project to move forward, working with the architects. He has been working frantically lately to try to get us a number because this application is due on June 1st to get some cost estimates. I believe he emailed me those just before this meeting, but I haven't had a chance to review them. But in talking with Lewis Young and Birmingham, who has been advising us on this and will help us with this application, we think it's likely we will get around $6.5 to 6.5 to 7.5 million is about what we can afford for that payment. They also think the Community Impact Board is probably more willing to fund us if we're around 6.5 million, but rather or not we're going to be able to get costs down to that is what we're still going to have to work through. We do have 1.2 million in capital project funds that you guys have already set aside for that. The Community Impact Board will not fund furniture and fixtures, so we will need to pay for any furniture and fixtures out of what we have in impact fees. So currently, you've already signed a contract to do the architect work. We are using the impact fees that the fire station has to pay for those. And then whatever funds are left over, once the architect has been paid, we can also use for furniture and fixtures. Basically, if it's not bolted down in the building, we cannot put it on the loan. So whatever
Maybe
we have
should
left.
bolt down the chairs.
Right. We could get really creative, I'm sure. So whatever we have left from that 1.2 million, whatever they need for furniture and fixtures, you would also have that amount to put towards the construction costs. So the fire chief and I will need to sit down and try to figure out how much we're short if we are on these estimates. But the reality is we don't really know how short we are until we get a firm bid on these. I do believe they have an RFP out now, but those contractors are able to update their bid, I believe, in November when we actually get the funding. That's the timeline that we're looking at is November. So I was going to discuss that in the MBA, but I'll just tell you now that the application is due on June 1st. We are required to submit to the Association of Governments 2 weeks prior to that date, so basically tomorrow. We will be giving them a copy of the application that we intend to file with the Community Impact Board. So that's due June 1st. We expect to be called in for a presentation to present the project. And I'm not sure if any of you were here when we did the fire station. But we will go in, give them a presentation of what the community need is and what that project is going to entail, either in August or September, depending on when they put us on their agenda. And then they will make a final funding decision in November. So as soon as we get, possibly late October, but as soon as we get a yes, then we will need to close on that loan, and then we would be able to award a bid and get a contractor going for that project. But rough numbers that they have ran for us to stay within a $441,000 payment, which is what we have set aside in the budget and what you did on the tax increase, we can get about a little over 7 million. If we go 25 years, I think you can get up to like 8.2 if you go 30 years. But that is total cost. So we need to pay all of our bond costs and our fees and all of that. So that's not total funds you'd have available for construction. But I think between that and the 1.2 million, hopefully we can get to some numbers. I think they may have to make some changes to the design that they've done, but we'll work on getting those numbers where they need to be. And then of course we'll bring that back to you.
Is a lot of that because interest rates have increased, and I'm sure the supplies are still
I think
going
it's
to be expensive as well?
inflation, but
Okay.
hopefully by November it goes down instead of up. I mean, that's a possibility, so. And then in the first meeting in June, we'll probably be bringing a public hearing just to allow the public to come in. We need to explain that that's the funding we are going to apply for and let them have a public hearing if they would like to come and comment on that. But it is significantly cheaper than going to the bond market. If the Community Impact Board tells us no, that they won't fund us, then we will need to go to public bond, and that will significantly reduce the amount of money we have available for construction, like by well over $1 million. So we're praying that we can get this through to the CIB. So that was actually a great question, not a question at all.
I just wasn't understanding, but that helps me a ton, so thank you. And this book is like giant, so I got like
No.
this far through it, you know?
It is a lot. I have a question about, I think I asked this last year, but, so we contract some services with the Parks Department, right? Like lawn maintenance, things like that. Is there ever a point where we feel like it's more beneficial to hire staff rather than contract? Like, so right now, we've budgeted $142,000. I just want to know if there's ever like a point where it's like, okay, let's just hire our own employees, but then we know how much insurance costs too, and equipment.
So as we've looked at that, that's the thing that actually deters us from, is the fact that you hire the employees to do that, then insurance comes into the play. So right now it is actually cheaper.
If you don't have employees with downtime either,
Right.
they
yeah,
could
they
do
just-
that. I guess that's would be the question.
No, we don't right
You
now,
don't,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, there was a time when they had more staff, but now that we've kind of assigned parks to certain employees, we only actually have 5 full-time staff members. Well, 5 that are out in the field and then the supervisor.
Chairman, when we made the decision to hire outside, what was even more impactful negatively to the city was the cost of equipment. We could not afford the equipment, and they were mowing with unsafe, or they weren't mowing because we didn't have the equipment. So when they put them side by side, what does equipment cost and employee cost, and what does it cost to hire it out? It was significantly cheaper to hire it out. Whether that has changed much right now, I don't know. We could, I guess, run numbers again. But at the time, there was no money in the 41 fund to buy anything, and that was what really made that decision.
Thank you.
So you go the other way on that, because you have lots of other things, you do the same thing. Do you look at that and try and see what's the best cost efficiency of the other ones we're doing, that we have our staff do? I don't know. I want to keep all our staff working, but I just also want to do the best with the money.
When we did do that, we did significantly decrease the number of seasonal employees for the Parks Department. We did.
So the mayor mentioned this in her budget message to you when she presented the first meeting in May, but one thing I would just like to point out, as you're looking through your budget, department by department, one thing that the mayor has asked each department to do was to try and stay within their same budget that they had last year. One being the tax increase that we had last year in order to be able to fund the much required fire station. We also had to make additions to the fire department from the fire study, so we know that the impact that made. We also are aware of our revenues are decreasing, and we're not really sure where the market's going. So she has asked each department head to stay within the same budget with no increase. And most of the departments have been able to do that. You will see a couple of departments that have some slight increases, and those are mostly for costs that are out of our control. A lot of it's utilities, Rocky Mountain Power, Questar, just things that have gone up that are not in our control. There also is no additional employees requested in this budget. So this is probably the first time I can remember in a long time, but there is not a single addition of employee or employee hours, from a part-time to a full-time. So everybody is working very hard to just, and to make sacrifices, because we know that costs have gone up. We know that inflation is affecting every single department, but they are working hard to make cuts everywhere they can to still remain within that same budget that they had last year, even though we know that they have increase in costs.
Can I add something really quick, because I know one of you asked about parks when you sent something to me. So Darwin explained. One of you had asked this on the side, so I figured I'd bring it up, but Darwin had explained his head count for his full-time regular employees. They actually have in this budget for their parks maintenance and weekend restrooms, if it goes through, you've got 106,000 plus all of the benefits. And by benefits, we use overhead. You've got to still pay workers' compensation and unemployment, FICA tax on even seasonal employees. But there's 106,000 there, and it equates to about 6,320 hours worth of seasonal work. So there's a lot of parks, and his team does a really good job spreading them out, but that's your value with what they currently have. But the mayor was right, the equipment was huge on top of that, so thanks.
So really, the increase in each department is primarily salary and then insurance.
Yes.
Because there is an increase, because we'll give
Yes, if you look at the bottom line, there is. But if you start with those 200 series accounts and you just look last year compared to this year, you will see that most departments are the same. Some of them have moved them around, like for the police department, for example, they stayed to the penny within their budget, but they did take 3,500 from here and move it to here and 2,000 to here. So you'll see a few that are offset, but on the bottom line, they did not increase their budget at all.
Something I did like to see is that the 2005 golf bonds is retired, because that's the one we paid for, right? So,
And you also paid off those RDA bonds.
and the RDA bonds, so,
Yes.
okay. Any other questions, comments?
I wasn't sure what you wanted us to do with this equipment list, just look it over and see if there's something.
Yeah, it's just for your information, just so you know what has been approved and what has been asked for. And if you have any questions next time, we can talk about it. If you have any other recommendations you want to discuss with the mayor.
So I get concerned, we know the pool is 20 years old, right? And that's right when you're going to start seeing the problems, right? We've already seen some of the problems. Right. So, I mean, I worry about things like that. How do we fund things like that when they come up? But I guess we worry about that when it happens. I always worry about the streets department and their facilities. They need significant upgrades there, and so I'm sure you lose sleep about it, Mayor, so, and Shannon, all of you do, but.
Yeah, so right now, what you're funding into those is the 1.2 million, plus all of your bond payments for the bonds that you have out right now. So that's how we're funding all of our capital equipment right now. So as things come up, they may take priority, other things come off the list, or eventually maybe there's more than the 1.2 million. I think we put 1.4 last year, we only had 1.2 this year for equipment. Or if you have major, then you may go out for bond or loan or, some of those. But how we keep the maintenance up is really through the transfers that we do in the 41 fund and giving those things priority as they come.
Yeah. And that's the concern though, right, of the sales tax decreasing, which I feel like it's most likely that we're going to see a significant decrease in the sales tax. So that's one of our big revenue sources so I appreciate the mayor and the staff keeping the budget where it's at. And I mean, we have to pay our employees. They need health insurance, and really that is the biggest increase to the budget, so.
And I think it was the Utilities and Cities in Town released a study that they had a company do on sales tax predictions. They did have Toil City in there. I think they projected us to lose 4 or 5%, something like that. Don't quote me on the numbers. You don't see that in my projections, but that's also because what they had us projected us bringing in this year wasn't the same as what we actually are. So this budget is probably a little more aggressive than what they predicted, but I think this is probably more accurate to what you will see because they had what was budgeted, but they don't have what we've actually been seeing come in. So across the board, everybody is predicting it's going to go down. I hope that's not correct, but that is the predictions.
That's another reason why it's important to have businesses that people can shop at here, because we need to have that sales tax. I mean, there's a fine line between keeping everything in line and still maintaining what we have. And if you get behind, then it costs more in the end. So it's important for people to realize that, I think.
And bringing new business here increases our property tax. So if we're losing in sales tax, we can make it up in property tax. Very important to bring business here.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions, comments? Okay, if you have any, then. Oh, Tony? Yeah, Tony's still on there. Tony, do you have any questions? Darwin wants me to ask you if you have questions.
I don't. Thank you, Justin.
You can thank Darwin. All right. I lost my paper. Let me find it. Okay, that is our last discussion item. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is our closed meeting. We do have a closed meeting to discuss litigation and property acquisition. I will entertain a motion to go to a closed meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCall, a second from Councilwoman Manzione. We'll take it to a vote. Councilwoman Manzione?
Aye.
Councilman Hanson?
Aye.
Councilman McCall?
Aye.
Councilman Graff?
Aye.
I'm Councilman Brady. I also vote aye. So we will recess here and then reconvene in the large conference room for a closed meeting.